Today on Running to Him.
We have a responsibility to be righteous in our interactions with others. We will read through the Pentateuch until January, and today we read Leviticus chapter 19, verse 9, through chapter 21, verse 25, and we'll concentrate on chapter 19, verses 13 through 15 and 18. Leviticus 19, verses 13 through 15 and 18 says, "You shall not oppress your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of a hired man are not to remain with you all night until morning. You shall not curse a deaf man. You shall not place a stumbling block before the blind. You shall revere your God. I am the Lord. You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor defer to the great, but you are to judge your neighbor fairly. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Well, in today's reading, God outlines moral living in general and sexual purity in great detail, and begins the discussion of rules for the priests. What I'd like to concentrate on today's devotion is how we are supposed to respond to our neighbors as individuals we meet. Jesus quoted the second part of verse 18 in Matthew 19:19 and 22:39, as well as Mark 12:31. Paul quotes it in Romans 13:9 and Galatians 5:14. James quotes it in James 2:8. It would seem that this is an important concept as we walk our Christian lives. There are three different principles that I'd like to point out in the section of today's reading that I pulled out. The first is found in verses 13 and 14, and in the last half of verse 18. We are to treat our neighbors with kindness and righteousness. We are to avoid placing a stumbling block in front of anyone. The second principle is found in verse 15. We should treat everyone fairly and not be partial to anyone. And finally, the first half of verse 18 says that the principle is that we are not to take vengeance or carrying a grudge toward anyone. In Luke 10, verse 30 through 37, Jesus responds to a question asking to describe or define just who a neighbor is. This is the famous story of the Good Samaritan. So the principle is anyone you meet is your neighbor. The greeter at Walmart is your neighbor. The policeman is your neighbor. The person who lives next door to you or down the street is your neighbor. And even the people you know of but don't know personally are your neighbors. So if you harbor ill feelings against someone, you do not love your neighbor as yourself. Now, before the pitchforks come out, let me say that you can disagree with someone, but you do not have to hate that person or consider them some form of lowlife. Today, politicians are talking a lot about equity. Unfortunately, they are not defining the word, and the people are taking the word equity to mean equality. Those words mean two different things. Equity means taking something and raising it to equal something else. Equality is the concept everything has the same value. When we did something to help someone out, such as tutoring them in a subject so that they could better get a grade, we acted with equity. If a police officer pulls over someone for running a stop sign, they are doing it with equality. In law, treat everyone with equality. In social interactions, we might treat a person with equity so that later on we can treat them equally. Finally, we should not take vengeance to solve political or private grievances. The law is to determine the punishment. We as parents are to discipline our children. Discipline may involve some punishment, but the idea is that we are helping them to become better people. Governmental punishment does not necessarily aim to make a person better. It has the goal of causing them grief for their actions. We have a responsibility to be righteous in our interactions with others.
Thank you for listening. We pray that today's devotion was meaningful to you. We would love to hear from you. You can use either Facebook or YouTube to like, subscribe, share, and tell others about us. If you would like to contact us, you can reach me at phineasjacobus@runningtohim.net.